This has major implications for the Minnesota Wild as David Jiricek's first stint with the big club went better than anyone could have imagined, not only scoring a goal, getting a pretty assist, he was also laying the body. Sorry, Nico Stern. Bill Guerin proving again what a masterclass this trade was, but it's not just the implication on the regular season. There's implications for the playoffs potentially and much further down the line. We also have some quotes from the Minnesota Wild organization, a lot of great stuff on the Jiricek situation, so stick around for all that coming up on this episode of Hat Trick HQ. But guys, as always, before we get into the video, a reminder that 93% of you watching are not subscribed, and you guys have been loving the Minnesota Wild content. So if you want to stay up to date on not only the Wild, but all the latest NHL storylines, hit the subscribe button down below. It's completely free. You won't regret it, I promise. Mark, let's just get into the David Jiricek stuff right now. My gosh, has he been great. Here's a quote from John Hynes. Let's just start off hot. He said, "I'm jacked about him to be here in the organization in the future. He's a real player. If he puts in the right work, whether it's in the NHL or the American League, the future is really bright for him." Now, Mark, I know we watched him play with the Wild, and the people who said he can't skate, well, they're hiding in the bushes now because it certainly didn't look like that when he was playing for the Wild. Of course, he was a casualty of the Minnesota Wild's cap crunch that is going to be alleviated a little bit after this season, so he's been sent back down to the AHL, but he's been happy with it. He's been okay with it. Mark, what have you seen from Jiricek? Like, I was expecting some good stuff, but not this good right away.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Yurchuk joining the team, the biggest thing with this, and the coach, he said it the best, he has a bright future ahead of him. This is a guy, when coming from Columbus, a lot of fans are expecting someone that couldn't skate. He would look out of place. But his skating does need improvement. But from what we've seen, he's a physical defenseman that can make flashy passes, good deking, and he can still skate than a lot of people, better than a lot of people thought. I mean, just looking at Alan Walsh, going on to continue on what Russo said, he had a great meeting with David Jiricek and said the defenseman's attitude was great when he learned he had to go back to Iowa. Jiricek told him he tried to play every game like it was the last, knowing the cap space and injured guys on the way back. This is awesome just to hear from a young guy wanting to break into the NHL. You could have guys that could be just kind of annoyed to go back to Iowa. He knows he needs to work. He played every game like it was the last one, and he wants to get better and understands why he got sent down and wasn't just annoyed with the coach, management, anything. He wants to get better and crack this Wild team. But just looking at him, could you see this guy becoming maybe even a top six defenseman at the end of the season? Just from the small showing he had, how well he played.
Yes. Like, right, I'm just excited. Like, I'm beyond excited for David Jiricek. Like, I mean, look, end of the season. Sorry, maybe I'm ahead of myself. Like, I don't know, right? I mean, this team pushing for a playoff spot, as you have the guys in the bottom pairing like John Merrill, and you have a guy like Zach Bogosian. So it's tough to crack that, especially when we're talking playoff time. But come playoff time, when the cap doesn't matter, if you have the roster space, you can bring him up. You can deploy him in strategic matchups. Like, again, right now, these kind of veterans, guys who have been through the ringer in the playoffs, who play a more playoff style hockey, and Bogosian and Merrill might be better in certain situations. But Jiricek has shown enough right now with the Minnesota Wild that I don't have any concerns if he were to become a full-time NHLer tomorrow. And I think that if the Minnesota Wild didn't have the cap constraints that they do right now, he would be right there in the NHL. And again, his career so far hasn't gone exactly to plan. He's not getting a ton of points in Iowa either, but he has as many points in Minnesota in 6 games. He honestly should have had more, right? His assist was nasty, his goal was nasty, and he got robbed by Mackenzie Blackwood in the game against Colorado. And in his final game with the Wild so far, 1 assist, +2, 1333 time on ice, 88.8 expected goals for percentage. When he was on the ice, he was the most effective Minnesota Wild player in controlling the expected goals. 3.66 game score, second on the whole team, largely in part due to his +2 and his assist. So, like, Mark, I don't know, like, as we're looking towards the future, we're talking playoffs, maybe, but as we look into next season, in my mind, there is no way this guy isn't immediately deployed, possibly as high as the second pairing, depending, but all that potential that we said was there, I'm seeing it in this little sample size in the bigs right now.
Yeah, I mean, because coming from Columbus, this is, and people tend to forget, a top 6 pick in the NHL draft. His skating was the biggest problem, which we did touch on. But looking at how he played in limited time was just incredible to see. And it really showed flashes on why Columbus took this guy so high and why it cost so much to bring in a player like this as well. But looking at the defense and kind of going into it, like you said, yes, you want guys like Bogosian and Merrill in these matchups for tough matchups in the playoffs. Physical guys are what wins you battles in the playoffs, especially a long 7-game series. But it doesn't look like Jiricek's a guy that's going to shy away from hits. I think cracking
True.
this top 6 is going to happen. I mean, even looking at very limited time with Chisholm, he was outstanding, and this was the best pairing. Now, looking at this, 21 minutes compared to someone behind him, like Brodin and Spurgeon playing 160 minutes, it's still very impressive to see two young guys, especially a young guy in Jiricek, just dominating from his limited time, his limited showing. And I think it's going to lead to management almost being forced to come up. Not a, hey, maybe we'll call this guy up, but more of a, hey, he is going crazy in Iowa right now. We can't go another game without calling him up. So once it gets to the playoffs, like you said, the cap doesn't matter. It is going to show a big impact. But looking at this, Josh, I know I'm going to throw it back to you. What's your thoughts on just how the Wild have developed their back end with all these defensemen they've brought in over the past couple of seasons?
They've done everything right. Bill Guerin's done pretty much everything right, especially when it comes to defense. As you can see, this tweet from MNW Prospects, they said before the 2022 draft, this is very true. The Wild had a critical lack of young defensemen who were under 25 years old. I remember those days, and I'm sure a lot of you Wild fans do as well. The top prospect was Kalen Addison, followed by Carson Lambos. But now we have Brock Faber, who's a bona fide #1 defenseman in this league, I'd say already, on what's going to turn into an incredible contract, if it isn't even already. The dude's incredible. And then you got Zeev Buium, one of the best defenseman prospects in the entire league, who's once again dominating in college. You got David Jiricek, who's already played 6 games with the Wild. He already has some NHL experience after being a top 6 pick in 2022. He's showing those flashes like we just talked about. Even a guy like Declan Chisholm, who, like, we had some hope for, but he looked to really click with Jiricek, at least to the eye test, mind you. So right now, like, going from almost nothing to all of this stash of riches is unbelievable management. It just goes to show that they saw the needs and they went out and fixed them, whether it was through the draft or through trades. Reminder, Jiricek and Faber both brought in through trades. Zeev Buium, they traded up to draft him, right? There's a lot of things here. As Buium, as you can see from the stats, the dude is incredible, on pace to basically match, if not exceed, last season's stats. Look, I'm just saying it's a masterclass from Bill Guerin. The defensive, I mean, we can get into the offense at some point as well. We don't even need to in this video, but the way that they've built up their decor for the future, I don't think there are many teams in the NHL, if any, that can match that level.
And I mean, looking at not only the defense, what you see is stacked going into the next couple of years. They get off the Suter and Parise contract, which means even more players coming in as reinforcements to an already good-looking team that looks like they could truly contend, especially when they get fully healthy and get more games. But looking at the forward group too, you still have a young player, and you can't talk about prospects in Minnesota without talking about Yurov and how well he's been developing in the KHL. This is the guy that's going to join the team at the very latest at the end of next year. Looking at this, Josh, I know the window is currently open, but do you think they can hit just a second plateau when these prospects start to join the team like Buium and Yurov and all the free agents? Or do you think maybe there's even a higher apron that they haven't hit yet?
I mean, look, I find it difficult to project too far into the future just because there is, I mean, look, I assume they're going to re-sign Kaprizov, but there is some uncertainty with all the guys they're going to have to pay. I mean, you're going to have to extend Rossi. Boldy's contract's going to age well. The cap's going to jump by almost 10 million this year, it looks like. So there's going to be some extra flexibility. You pay Kaprizov whatever he wants. You got Faber, you got Buium, you got Yurov coming over, who's probably going to be a top 6 forward within a year or two of coming to North America. I think, like, this team right now was first in the NHL for a bit. They're struggling a little bit here and there now, but they're still one of the top teams out west, even with all the struggles we talk about. And the thing is, not many other guys are getting that much older. Yeah, Spurgeon's getting towards the end now, but he's been injured so much, you almost might not feel it, as weird as that is to say. You got guys like Foligno and Hartman, but they're still around for another few years. You got Brodin, he's not that old either. Like, this team has a contention window that's much longer than most other teams in the NHL, I think. But I want to hear what you guys have to say. What are your thoughts on their development of not only their defensive prospects, David Jiricek situation, but all their forwards and the situation they put themselves in moving forward? We'd love to hear from you, but that'll do it for this episode of Hat Trick HQ. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. You guys have been subscribing like crazy. We just hit 10,000, and hey, if you made it almost 10 minutes into this video and you're not part of that 10,000, hit the button now. It's completely free, and I promise you won't regret it. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host Mark Pye. We'll catch you in the next one.